My name is Karen Mitchell, and I need to tell you about the day I discovered I'd been dead for 2 years. Not actually dead, of course. I was very much alive, working as a nurse in Seattle, living my quiet life in my small apartment with my cat, Mr. Whiskers. But according to my father, according to the man who raised me, who taught me to ride a bike, who walked me down the aisle at my wedding, I had died in a horrific car accident in the spring of 2019. He believed this lie until the day he actually died, and my brother, Daniel, made sure of it. I should start at the beginning, back when everything still made sense, before my world turned into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. It was a Tuesday morning in October 2021 when I got the call. I was just finishing my shift at Seattle General, exhausted from a 12-hour overnight stint in the ER. My phone buzzed as I was changing out of my scrubs. Unknown number flashed on the screen. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something made me answer. "Is this Karen Mitchell?" A woman's voice, professional, careful. "Yes, this is she." "Ms. Mitchell, this is Patricia Hendricks from Greenwood Funeral Home in Denver. I'm calling about your father, Robert Mitchell. I'm very sorry to inform you that he passed away yesterday evening." The world tilted. I grabbed the locker room bench to steady myself. What? No, that can't be right. I just talked to him last week. He was fine. I understand this is shocking news, Patricia continued gently. According to our records, your brother Daniel made the arrangements. The funeral is scheduled for this Saturday at 2 o'clock. I'm calling because we found your contact information in your father's old address book, and we thought you'd want to know. My brother, Daniel. Wait, I said, my nurse's training kicking in, forcing me to think clearly through the shock. What did he die of? Was he sick? Was there an accident? A pause. Ms. Mitchell, your father had advanced dementia. He'd been in declining health for quite some time. I assumed you knew. Dementia. Advanced dementia. How long? How long was he sick? I don't have those details, I'm afraid. You'd need to speak with your brother about that. I'm so very sorry for your loss. After she hung up, I sat there in that locker room for 20 minutes, staring at nothing, my mind racing. Advanced dementia. My father had dementia, and I didn't know. How could I not know? But even as I asked myself that question, a cold feeling settled in my stomach, because I did know, or at least I should have known something was wrong. The signs had been there. I'd just been too far away, too busy, too trusting to see them. My father and I had always been close. After my mother died of cancer when I was 16, it was just the three of us, Dad, me, and Daniel. Dad was a high school history teacher, the kind everyone loved. Patient, funny, endlessly curious about the world. He encouraged my dream of becoming a nurse, helped me apply for scholarships, drove me to Seattle when I got accepted to the university here. Daniel was different. 5 years older than me, he'd always been the golden child, at least in his own mind. Charismatic, charming, but there was something underneath that charm that made me uncomfortable. He'd had a string of failed businesses, always had some new opportunity that required money Dad didn't really have. He'd borrowed from Dad more times than I could count, and as far as I knew, he'd never paid any of it back. When I moved to Seattle for nursing school at 22, Daniel stayed in Denver. He lived about 30 minutes from Dad, in a house he was constantly renovating with funds that seemed to materialize from nowhere. He was married briefly, divorced badly, and by the time Dad got sick, he was living alone, working as a consultant for various companies, which, as far as I could tell, meant he had no actual job. After I moved, I'd call Dad every week, usually on Sunday evenings. We'd talk about everything, his students, my work at the hospital, politics, books we were reading. Those calls were the anchor of my week. But over the past 2 years, things had changed. Slowly at first, so gradually I barely noticed. Dad started forgetting our calls. I'd phone at our usual time and he wouldn't answer. When I'd try again later, he'd seem confused about why I was calling. Didn't we just talk? Even though it had been 2 weeks. Then he started repeating himself, telling me the same stories multiple times in a single conversation. I chalked it up to getting older. He was 73 after all. Then came the call that should have alarmed me more than it did. It was March 2019. Dad answered on the first ring, which was unusual lately. "Karen!" He sounded delighted, more energetic than he'd been in months. "Sweetheart, it's so good to hear your voice." "Hi, Dad. How are you feeling?" "Oh, can't complain. Listen, I wanted to ask you something. Daniel mentioned you might be moving back to Denver soon. Is that true?" I laughed. "No, Dad, I'm not moving. I love Seattle. My job is here, my life is here. Why would I move back?" A long pause. "Oh, I thought Daniel said you were thinking about it, getting tired of the rain and all that." "Daniel said that?" A prickle of unease. "That's weird. I never told him that. I'm not moving, Dad, I promise. If I ever did, you'd be the first to know." Of course, of course. I must have misunderstood." We talked for a few more minutes, but something felt off. Why would Daniel tell Dad I was moving when I wasn't? I should have called Daniel right then. I should have asked him what was going on, but I didn't. I told myself it was just a miscommunication, that Dad probably confused something Daniel said. That was my first mistake. Over the next few months, Dad became harder and harder to reach. Sometimes he wouldn't answer for days. When I did get him on the phone, he seemed distant, confused. Sometimes he didn't seem to remember our previous conversations at all. "Dad, is everything okay?" I asked during one call in July 2019. "You seem different lately." "Different how?" "I don't know, forgetful, maybe? Are you feeling all right? Have you seen a doctor?" "Karen, I'm fine. Stop worrying so much. You sound just like Daniel." Daniel? My brother was always in the background of these conversations now, I realized. Dad would mention him constantly. "Daniel fixed the sink. Daniel drove me to the store. Daniel said this or that." "It's good that Daniel's around to help," I said carefully. "But if you're not feeling well, you should see a doctor. Maybe I should fly out for a visit. I have some time off coming up next month." "No," his response was sharp, almost panicked. "No, you don't need to do that. I'm fine, really. And you're so busy with work. Daniel's here if I need anything." Another mistake. I should have gotten on a plane right then. But Dad sounded so adamant, and I was busy. We were short-staffed at the hospital, and I'd just been promoted to senior nurse in the ER. I told myself I'd visit at Christmas. But Christmas came, and when I called to arrange my visit, Daniel answered Dad's phone. "Karen, hey, long time no talk." His voice was friendly, casual, too casual. "Hey, Daniel, is Dad around? I wanted to talk to him about Christmas." "Oh, Dad's sleeping right now. He's been really tired lately. Listen, about Christmas, I don't think it's a good idea for you to visit right now." My hand tightened on the phone. "Why not?" "Dad's been having some health issues. Nothing serious, but the doctor thinks it's best if he avoids stress and excitement for a while. Keeps things calm and routine." "Health issues? What kind of health issues? Why didn't anyone tell me?" "It's nothing to worry about, really. Just some age-related stuff. Memory problems mostly. The doctor says it's important not to disrupt his routine too much. New situations can be confusing for him." Memory problems. The words sent a chill through me. "Daniel, if Dad has memory problems, I need to know about it. I should be there. Daniel, you live in Seattle. I live 30 minutes away. I've got this handled. Trust me, okay? I'm taking care of Dad. You don't need to worry." Something in his tone made me bristle. "He's my father too." "I know that, and I know you care about him. But flying out here, disrupting everything, it's not going to help. Just let me handle it, okay? I'll keep you updated." I should have fought harder. I should have insisted. But Daniel had always been good at making me doubt myself, at making me feel like I was overreacting. And I was tired, so tired from long shifts and the constant stress of the ER. Fine, I said, but I want to talk to Dad. Have him call me when he wakes. Sure thing. He never called. After that, my weekly calls with Dad became increasingly sporadic. Sometimes I couldn't reach him at all. When I did, our conversations grew shorter, more confused. He'd forget who he was talking to midway through the call. Once he called me Margaret, my mother's name. Dad, it's Karen, I'd said softly. Mom died, remember? 17 years ago. A long, painful silence. Then, of course, I'm sorry, sweetheart. I don't know why I said that. I started calling Daniel more, asking about Dad's condition. He always had the same answer. Dad was fine, just getting older, nothing to worry about. Has he seen a neurologist? I asked in February 2020. Yeah, we've been to a couple doctors. They say it's normal aging, maybe early dementia, but it's manageable. Manageable? Daniel, he forgot who I was last week. Look, Karen, I know this is hard for you, being so far away, but I'm here. I'm handling it. Dad's in good hands. I want to come visit. It's really not a good time. There's this virus thing going around. Coronavirus? The doctors are saying older people especially should avoid contact with people who've been traveling. And you work in a hospital. You'd be the worst person to expose him right now. COVID, of course. The pandemic had just started making headlines. Hospitals were preparing for the worst. Daniel was right. I'd be a risk to Dad's health if I visited. Okay, I said reluctantly. But keep me updated. I mean it, Daniel. I will. I promise. Another lie. The pandemic changed everything. Seattle was hit hard and fast. The ER became a war zone. We were working double shifts, exhausted, terrified, watching people die alone because their families couldn't visit. I'd call Dad when I could, but often I was too tired, too drained. Sometimes a week would go by before I had the energy to dial his number. And when I did call, he often didn't answer. When Daniel answered instead, he'd say Dad was sleeping or confused or having a bad day. The dementia's getting worse, Daniel told me in June 2020. He's having more bad days than good days now. I want a video chat with him. Can you set that up? I've tried, Karen. He doesn't understand how it works. He gets frustrated with the technology. It's better if we don't push it. I should have known. I should have realized. But I was drowning in my own life, in the trauma of the pandemic, in the endless stream of patients dying alone in my ER. I trusted my brother to take care of our father. That was my biggest mistake of all. The flight to Denver was a blur. I'd called my supervisor, explained the situation, got bereavement leave approved. I'd packed a bag in a daze, barely remembering what I threw in there. All I could think about was my father dying alone, sick with dementia, while I was 1,000 miles away. Why hadn't Daniel told me how bad it was? Why hadn't I pushed harder to visit? I landed in Denver on Thursday evening, 2 days before the funeral. I'd called Daniel 3 times from the airport. He didn't answer. I left voicemails asking him to call me back, to tell me where the funeral was, to explain what happened. Nothing. Finally, I called the funeral home and got the address for the service. Then I rented a car and drove to Dad's house. It was dark when I pulled up to the small ranch-style home where I'd grown up. The porch light was off. The yard looked unkempt, overgrown. A sold sign stood in the front yard. Sold? My father's house had been sold, without anyone telling me. I sat in the rental car staring at that sign, feeling like I'd entered an alternate universe. None of this made sense. Dad loved this house. He and Mom had bought it 30 years ago. He'd always said he'd die in this house. Well, he had died, but the house was sold. I pulled out my phone and called Daniel again. This time he answered. Karen, I figured you'd call. His voice was calm, too calm. Daniel, what the hell is going on? Why is Dad's house sold? Why didn't you tell me he was this sick? Why didn't you— Slow down, he interrupted. I know you're upset. We'll talk at the funeral, okay? There's a lot to explain. No, we'll talk now. I'm sitting outside Dad's house. I want to see you. I want answers. A long pause. I'm not there. I'm at my place. Look, it's late. You must be exhausted from the flight. Check into a hotel, get some rest, and we'll talk tomorrow. Daniel. Tomorrow, Karen. I promise we'll talk, but not tonight. He hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at my childhood home, now sold to strangers. Finally, I drove to a hotel and checked in. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. My mind kept spinning with questions, with guilt, with a growing sense that something was very, very wrong. The funeral home was small, tasteful, filled with flowers. I arrived an hour early, hoping to talk to Daniel before the service. Instead, I found Patricia Hendricks, the woman who'd called me, arranging programs on a table near the entrance. Miss Mitchell? She recognized me somehow, maybe from the wild look in my eyes. I'm so glad you could make it. Thank you for calling me. My brother didn't tell me Dad had died. Her expression flickered with something. Surprise? Concern? But she smoothed it quickly into professional sympathy. These situations can be complicated. I'm sure your brother had his reasons. Can I see him? My father? Of course. He's in the viewing room. Take all the time you need. The viewing room was quiet, dimly lit, and there, in a simple casket at the front, was my father. He looked smaller than I remembered, thinner. His face had that waxy, unnatural quality of the dead, but I could still see him, the man who'd raised me, taught me, loved me. His hair had gone completely white. There were lines on his face I didn't remember. I stood there, looking down at him, and the tears finally came. I'm so sorry, Dad. I should have been here. I should have come sooner. I should have... Karen. I turned. Daniel stood in the doorway. He'd aged too. His hair was graying at the temples, his face lined with stress. He wore a black suit that looked expensive. Daniel, I wiped my tears. We need to talk. I know. Come on, let's go to one of the family rooms. I followed him to a small room off the main hall. He closed the door behind us, and we stood there, two siblings who'd barely spoken in years, separated by their dead father's secrets. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me how sick he was? Daniel sighed, rubbing his face. It's complicated, Karen. Complicated? He was my father. I know he was, but you have to understand, his dementia got really bad, really fast, especially after the pandemic started. He was confused all the time, agitated. The doctors said stress made it worse. You should have told me. I would have come. I would have helped. That's exactly why I didn't tell you. Daniel's voice rose, then he checked himself, lowering it again. Every time you called, every time you pushed to visit, it confused him more. He didn't understand why you weren't there in person. He'd get upset, wondering why his daughter never came to see him. It was torture, Karen, for him and for me. The words hit like a punch. He knew I wasn't visiting? He was upset? At first, yeah, but then, Daniel looked away. Then he started forgetting you altogether. It was better that way, honestly. It was peaceful. Forgetting me. My father had forgotten I existed. So you just let him forget me? You didn't try to remind him? The doctor said not to. They said it would just confuse him more, trying to force memories that weren't there anymore. I did what was best for Dad, Karen, even if it meant... He trailed off. Even if it meant erasing me from his life. I'm sorry, I really am, but he's at peace now. That's what matters. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to hit him. But this was my father's funeral, and I owed Dad more than a scene. Fine, I said coldly. We'll deal with this later. What about his affairs? The house is sold? Yeah, I sold it last month. Dad needed round-the-clock care toward the end. That's expensive. The house sale covered the medical bills. Last month? He was alive last month. He was in a care facility. He didn't need the house anymore. You could have asked me to help with the bills. Daniel's expression hardened. Why? So you could feel better about not being here? I handled it, Karen. I handled everything. You were in Seattle living your life. I was here watching Dad deteriorate day by day. So yeah, I made the decisions. I did what was needed to be done. The anger in his voice surprised me. There was something else there too. Resentment maybe, or guilt masquerading as righteousness. What about his will? I asked. His estate? We'll deal with that after the funeral. Right now, let's just focus on saying goodbye to Dad, okay? I nodded, too exhausted to fight anymore. The funeral was small. A handful of Dad's former colleagues from the high school, a few neighbors, some people from his church. I stood beside Daniel, greeting people, accepting condolences, feeling like a ghost at my own father's funeral. Several people seemed surprised to see me. Karen, we didn't know you'd be able to make it, said Mrs. Patterson, Dad's next-door neighbor for 20 years. Of course I came. He was my father. Oh, I know, dear. It's just, well, Daniel said you were so busy with your nursing work and with the pandemic and everything. She trailed off uncomfortably. Others had similar reactions. They were glad to see me, but surprised, as if Daniel had told them I might not come. One of Dad's former teaching colleagues, Mr. Brennan, pulled me aside after the service. Karen, I'm so sorry for your loss. Your father talked about you all the time before he got sick. Thank you, Mr. Brennan. He hesitated, then said quietly, I just wanted you to know he loved you very much, right up until the end, even when he couldn't remember much else. Daniel would show him pictures sometimes, and your father's face would light up. That's my Karen, my beautiful girl. My throat closed up. Daniel showed Dad pictures of me? Dad remembered me, at least in glimpses. He'd wanted to remember. Why did that make me feel worse instead of better? After the funeral, we went to Dad's lawyer's office for the reading of the will. Just me, Daniel, and Dad's longtime attorney, Gerald Morrison. Thank you both for coming, Gerald said, arranging papers on his desk. I know this is a difficult time, but we need to address Robert's estate. This won't take long. He opened a folder and pulled out several documents. Robert updated his will about 6 months ago. The primary asset was the house, which has already been sold. The proceeds from that sale, along with Robert's savings and life insurance, total approximately $375,000. I straightened in my chair. That was more than I had expected. Dad had always lived modestly, but he'd been a teacher for 40 years, and Mom's life insurance had been substantial. Additionally, there are some personal effects. Family heirlooms, photo albums, your mother's jewelry, things like that. Okay, I said. How is it divided? Gerald looked uncomfortable. He glanced at Daniel, then back to me. Karen, I think there's been some miscommunication. Robert left everything to Daniel, the entire estate. I laughed, actually laughed because it was so absurd. That's not possible. Dad wouldn't do that. I'm afraid he did. The will is very clear. Daniel is the sole beneficiary. Let me see it. I slid the document across the desk, read it once, then again, my brain refusing to process the words. I, Robert Mitchell, being of sound mind, do hereby leave my entire estate to my son, Daniel Mitchell. To my daughter, Karen Mitchell, I leave nothing, as she has predeceased me. Predeceased me? As she has predeceased me? What the hell does that mean? I looked up at Gerald, then at Daniel. I haven't predeceased anyone. I'm sitting right here. Gerald looked genuinely distressed. Karen, I'm so sorry. When Robert updated his will, he believed you had died. I tried to verify this, but Daniel confirmed it, and Robert was adamant. Confirmed it? I turned to Daniel. You told our father I was dead? Karen, let me explain. You told our father I was dead. I was standing, my voice rising. What the fuck is wrong with you? It wasn't like that. You have to understand. Dad was so confused. He kept asking why you never visited, why you never called. It was breaking his heart. I thought it would be easier for him to think you were gone rather than think you'd abandoned him. So you told him I died? You let him believe his daughter was dead? Did you show him an obituary? Did you hold a fake funeral? Daniel's silence was answer enough. Oh my God. Oh my God, you actually did, didn't you? You created some elaborate lie about me dying, and you let Dad believe it. Our father died thinking I was dead, Daniel. He grieved for me, and you let him. It was mercy, Daniel said, his voice rising to mine. It was merciful compared to the alternative. He was suffering, Karen, every day, wondering why you didn't care enough to visit. At least thinking you were dead gave him peace. Peace? You call that peace? Making him mourn his own daughter and conveniently changing his will so you got everything? That's not why I did it. Then why? Explain it to me, Daniel, because right now it looks like you exploited our father's dementia to steal my inheritance. Gentlemen, please, Gerald interjected, but we both ignored him. I took care of him. For 2 years, I was there every single day. I fed him, bathed him, dealt with his confusion and his anger and his fear. I watched him disappear piece by piece. Where were you, Karen? In Seattle, living your perfect life, calling once a week when you remembered? You want your inheritance? You should have been here to earn it. The words hung in the air between us. Get out, I said quietly. Karen, get out. Get out before I do something we'll both regret. Daniel looked at Gerald, who nodded slightly. He stood, straightened his expensive suit, and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned back. The funeral expenses came out of Dad's estate. I'll send you the bill for half, since you're so concerned about fairness. Then he was gone. I sat in Gerald's office for a long time after Daniel left, staring at the will, at those horrible words, as she has predeceased me. Can I contest this? I asked. Gerald sighed heavily. You can try, but it will be difficult. The will is properly executed, witnessed, notarized, and Robert genuinely believed you were deceased when he signed. He spoke about your death with me. Karen, he grieved. He showed me newspaper clippings about your accident. Newspaper clippings? What accident? An car accident in Seattle, May 2019. According to the articles, you were killed instantly. May 2019, right around the time Dad had started becoming unreachable, confused, right when Daniel had started making excuses for why I couldn't visit. Those articles were fake, I said. I was never in an accident. I never died. Daniel manufactured all of it. If that's true, if you can prove Daniel deliberately deceived your father for financial gain, then yes, you might have grounds to contest, but proving it will be extremely difficult, especially given Robert's mental state. A court might argue that Robert's dementia made him susceptible to believing things that weren't true, and that Daniel was simply going along with his father's delusions rather than causing them. Going along with them? He created them. Perhaps, but can you prove that beyond a reasonable doubt? Do you have evidence that Daniel fabricated these documents, that he actively manipulated your father's perceptions? Because Daniel will argue he was just trying to give your father peace, that lying to a dementia patient is sometimes necessary for their well-being. I thought about that. What evidence did I have? What could I prove? I need to see those newspaper articles, the ones Dad showed you. I don't have them, unfortunately. Robert brought them to my office, but he took them with him. They'd be among his effects. You'd have to ask Daniel. Right. Ask Daniel, who'd stolen everything from me to provide evidence of his own fraud. There has to be another way, I said. What if I... My phone rang. Unknown number again. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Is this Karen Mitchell? A man's voice this time, older. Yes? Ms. Mitchell, my name is Thomas Chen. I was your father's neighbor for the past 5 years. I saw your name in the obituary and I wanted to call and express my condolences. Thank you, Mr. Chen. That's very kind. I also wanted to... Well, this might sound strange, but I wanted to tell you something about your father. I'm not sure if it's important, but it's been bothering me. I straightened in my chair, my instincts prickling. What is it? About 2 years ago, your father came to my door one evening. He was very upset. He told me his son had just informed him that you died in a car accident. He was crying, Karen. He asked me if I'd known you, if I remembered you visiting. He seemed so confused about it all. What did you tell him? I told him I was very sorry for his loss, and that I remembered you visiting a few years back. You'd seemed like a lovely young woman. He thanked me and left. But here's the thing. A few weeks later, I saw you. I saw someone who looked exactly like you, walking from a car to your father's front door. I even waved, but you didn't see me. My heart started pounding. When was this? Early June 2019. I remember because it was right before my wife and I left for our summer vacation. I thought it was strange. Your father had just told me you were dead, but here you were. I assumed I'd misunderstood something. Tell me, Mr. Chen, that wasn't me. I was in Seattle. I haven't been to Denver since 2018. A long pause. But I saw you. I'm certain it was you. Could you describe this person? Young woman, late 20s, dark hair like yours, similar height and build. She was wearing sunglasses and a jacket, but I'd swear it was you. Did you see where she went? Into your father's house. She had a key. She was there for maybe 20 minutes, then left. I saw her a few other times over the next year, always going into your father's house. I assumed you'd moved back to help take care of him. I thanked Mr. Chen and hung up with shaking hands. Someone had been impersonating me, going to Dad's house, pretending to be me, and I had a terrible suspicion about who. I spent the next 2 days in Denver digging. I stayed at my hotel and made calls, sent emails, requested documents. I felt like I was in a detective movie, except this was my life, my father, my family being torn apart. I started with the newspaper articles. If Daniel had fabricated articles about my death, there would be a trail. I called the Seattle Times, the Post-Intelligencer, every major newspaper in Seattle. No articles about a Karen Mitchell dying in a car accident in May 2019. Nothing even close. Next, I requested death certificates from the Washington State Department of Health. No certificate for Karen Mitchell in 2019. Because I didn't die. Then I got bold. I called the Denver Police Department and reported fraud. They took my statement, seemed interested, but told me it would take time to investigate. It's a civil matter more than a criminal one, the detective told me, unless we can prove your brother intended to defraud your father, which is tough with dementia involved. Your best bet is probably to contest the will in probate court. So I called lawyers, 5 different probate attorneys. 3 told me the case was too complicated. 1 wanted a $50,000 retainer. The 5th, a woman named Sarah Goldstein, listened to my story and then said something that gave me hope. This is elder abuse, she said flatly, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. If we can prove your brother deliberately manipulated your father's dementia to isolate you and secure the inheritance, we have a case. It won't be easy, but we have a case. I hired her on the spot. Sarah was thorough. Over the next 2 weeks, while I'd reluctantly returned to Seattle and my job, she subpoenaed Dad's medical records, his bank statements, phone records, everything. She interviewed his doctors, his neighbors, anyone who'd had contact with him in the last 2 years. What she found was damning. Dad had been diagnosed with early-stage dementia in March 2019, right when Daniel had started making excuses about why I couldn't visit. The diagnosis was in his medical file, clear as day. Daniel had been at that appointment. He'd known. The bank records showed that in April 2019, Daniel had been made joint owner on all of Dad's accounts, checking, savings, everything. Over the next 2 years, there were regular withdrawals, always round numbers, 1,000 here, 5,000 there. Some went to the care facility, but many were just cash withdrawals with no clear purpose. Dad's phone records showed that he'd tried to call me, my actual number, dozens of times between March and June 2019. Most calls lasted less than a minute. Wrong numbers or calls Daniel had intercepted. But the real bombshell came from Dad's neighbor on the other side, a retired teacher named Linda Walsh. Sarah interviewed her, and Linda remembered something crucial. In May 2019, she'd seen Daniel at Dad's house with a young woman. Daniel had introduced her as a home health aide, but Linda had seen the woman again several times, and once she'd overheard Daniel coaching her. "He was standing outside your father's window. I was gardening, and I heard him talking to this woman. He was telling her, 'Remember, you're his daughter. He needs to see his daughter is okay. Just tell him you're doing fine, you're happy, then leave.' It was so strange. I didn't understand what he meant at the time." An actress. Daniel had hired an actress to impersonate me. Armed with this information, Sarah filed a formal challenge to the will. She also filed for a temporary restraining order preventing Daniel from accessing or distributing any of Dad's assets until the case was resolved. The court date was set for 6 months out. 6 months of waiting, of wondering, of reliving every conversation with Dad, every missed call, every time I should have insisted on visiting but didn't. In the meantime, Sarah tracked down the actress. It wasn't hard. Daniel had paid her through Venmo, of all things. Her name was Jessica Reeves, and when Sarah's investigator contacted her, she was horrified to learn what she'd actually been part of. He told me it was for his father's peace of mind. He said his sister had moved abroad and couldn't visit, but it would comfort his dad to see someone who looked like her. I thought I was doing something nice. I had no idea he was... God, I'm so sorry. Jessica agreed to testify. She provided receipts, text messages, everything. Daniel had paid her $500 per visit, 10 visits total between May 2019 and March 2020. The texts were particularly damning. Daniel, remember, keep it short. If he asks about Seattle, say you love it there. Don't give too many details. Jessica, got it. Same as before? Daniel, yes, just a quick visit. Let him see you're okay, then leave. The less time you spend, the less chance he'll realize something's off. There it was, in writing. Daniel coaching an actress to deceive our dying father. But we needed more. We needed to prove that Daniel had actively told Dad I was dead, not just gone. We needed evidence of the fake obituary, the fake news articles. That evidence came from the most unlikely source, the care facility. Sunny Meadows Care Facility had been Dad's home for the last 8 months of his life. It was a nice place from what I could see online, clean, modern, with decent reviews. When Sarah subpoenaed their records, we hit gold. The facility kept detailed notes on every resident, including their emotional and mental state. Dad's file was heartbreaking to read. Page after page documenting his decline, his confusion, his moments of clarity becoming fewer and farther between. But in June 2019, there was an incident report. Date, June 18, 2019. Resident, Robert Mitchell. Incident, resident became extremely agitated during evening hours. Found in common room crying, clutching photographs and newspaper clippings. When staff approached, resident showed them articles about a car accident. Resident insisted his daughter had died. Staff attempted to comfort him. Resident's son, Daniel Mitchell, arrived approximately 1 hour later, confirmed resident's daughter had recently passed in Seattle. Resident was given prescribed anxiety medication and calmed down. Son stayed with resident for remainder of the evening. Items collected from resident: photos of daughter, newspaper clippings about accident. Items returned to son for safekeeping, as they were causing resident distress. Daniel had taken the evidence. The fake articles, whatever they were, Daniel had them. But the facility had copies. They'd photographed the incident report and the items, standard protocol when residents become agitated. Those photos were still in Dad's file. Sarah got them, and when she showed them to me, I understood the full scope of what my brother had done. The first item was a printout of an online news article. It looked official, proper formatting, a legitimate-seeming header reading Seattle Tribune in that classic newspaper font. The headline made my stomach turn. Local nurse killed in I-5 collision. Karen Mitchell, 28, died instantly when her vehicle was struck by a semi-truck on I-5 yesterday evening. Mitchell, a nurse at Seattle General Hospital, was returning home from her shift when the accident occurred. Washington State Patrol confirmed heavy rain and reduced visibility were factors. Mitchell is survived by her loving father, Robert Mitchell, and her brother, Daniel Mitchell. She was preceded in death by her mother, Margaret Mitchell. In lieu of flowers, the family requests donations be made to the American Nurses Foundation. A memorial service will be held privately. Below the obituary was another newspaper clipping, this one from a fake Denver Post article. Denver man mourns daughter killed in Seattle crash. And there was a photo of Dad, recent, from what I could tell, probably taken by Daniel specifically for this purpose. Dad looked devastated in the picture, tears on his face, holding one of my old high school photos. The article was brief, just a few paragraphs about a local teacher losing his daughter, quotes from friends and colleagues about what a tragedy it was. None of it was real. All of it was designed to convince one person, my father. I stared at these documents in Sarah's office, my hands shaking. "This is sociopathic," I whispered. "He created an entire fake reality." "It's certainly extreme," Sarah agreed, "but it's also exactly what we need. This proves premeditation. This proves Daniel didn't just go along with your father's confused beliefs. He actively created those beliefs. He manufactured evidence and used it to manipulate a vulnerable adult. Can we prove he made these? He'll say Dad found them somewhere online, believed something that wasn't real. We can prove the newspapers don't exist. We can prove no accident occurred. We have Jessica's testimony that Daniel hired her to impersonate you. We have the phone records showing your father tried to call you, but Daniel intercepted the calls. We have the bank records showing Daniel gained financial control of your father's assets immediately after the diagnosis. Pattern of behavior, Karen. That's what convinces judges. What about criminal charges? This isn't just civil fraud. He abused a vulnerable adult. He stole from him. Sarah hesitated. I've been in contact with the DA's office. They're interested, but prosecuting elder abuse is complicated, especially when the victim is deceased. The best they might do is fraud charges, but even that is tricky. Daniel will argue he was acting in your father's best interests, making difficult medical decisions, protecting him from stress. He'll play the devoted son who sacrificed everything. What if I can prove otherwise? What if I can show Dad wanted to see me, that he was trying to reach me? That would help significantly. Do you have any evidence of that? I thought about it. Dad's attempts to call me had been intercepted, but there had to be something else, some trace of Dad reaching out, trying to contact me despite Daniel's interference. His computer, I said suddenly. Dad had an old laptop. Did Daniel account for that in the estate inventory? Sarah flipped through papers. There's a list here: desktop computer, tablet, but no laptop mentioned. He must still have it, or he destroyed it. If there's evidence on that laptop, emails, search histories, anything showing your father was trying to contact you or questioning your supposed death, that could be crucial. How do I get it? Daniel won't just hand it over. We can subpoena it, but if he's already destroyed it, we're out of luck. Then I need to get it before he realizes we're looking for it. Sarah gave me a look. Karen, I can't advise you to break into your brother's house. You're not advising me. I'm not hearing you advise me. I'm just visiting my brother to discuss family matters. If you happen to find the laptop during this visit, and if you happen to bring it to me, and if there happens to be evidence on it, that evidence might not be admissible in court if it was obtained illegally, but it might point us toward other evidence that is admissible. Theoretically. Then, theoretically, I should visit my brother. I'd been in Denver for 3 weeks now, taking extended leave from the hospital, staying in an extended stay hotel, and slowly piecing together the truth of what Daniel had done. Sarah had advised me not to contact him directly, but I had to. I had to hear him explain himself, and I had to get that laptop. I called him on a Thursday evening. He answered on the third ring. "Karen?" His voice was guarded. "I heard you hired a lawyer." "You heard correctly. We're contesting the will." "On what grounds?" "Dad was clear about his wishes." "On the grounds that you committed elder abuse and fraud. On the grounds that you told Dad I was dead, Daniel. You faked newspaper articles. You hired an actress to impersonate me. You stole his money and his house, and you let him die believing his daughter was dead. How could you?" Silence. Then, "You don't understand." "Then make me understand. I'm coming over, tonight. We're going to talk about this face to face." "I don't think that's a good idea." "I don't care what you think. I'll be there in 20 minutes. You can let me in, or I can make a scene on your front lawn. Your choice." I hung up before he could respond. Daniel's house was in an upscale suburb, all pristine lawns and two-car garages. The house itself was large, modern, expensive-looking. Renovations funded by Dad's money, I thought bitterly. He opened the door before I could knock. He looked tired, older than his 43 years. We stood there for a moment, siblings who'd once been close, now strangers bound only by betrayal. "Come in," he said finally. The house was beautiful inside. Hardwood floors, granite countertops, expensive furniture. On the mantel, I saw photos of Dad. Him as a young man, him with Mom, him with Daniel. None of me. "Nice place," I said coldly. "Dad's inheritance bought all this?" "I bought this house 10 years ago. And refinanced it how many times? Using Dad's money to cover your mortgage? I've seen the bank records, Daniel." He flinched. "You want a drink?" "I want answers." He poured himself a whiskey, drank half of it. "Sit down." "I'll stand." "Fine." He refilled his glass. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Start with when you decided to tell Dad I was dead." Daniel looked into his drink. "It wasn't a decision, not at first, it just happened." "Things like that don't just happen, Daniel." "You don't know what it was like," his voice rose. "You weren't here. You have no idea what it was like watching him disappear. Every day, a little bit more of him gone. Do you know what that's like? Do you?" "I could have, if you'd told me." I tried to tell him he was sick, but you were too busy with your perfect Seattle life to care." "That's bullshit and you know it. You deliberately kept me away." "Because you would have made it worse." He drank more whiskey. "Every time you called, he'd be confused for days afterward. Where's Karen? Why doesn't Karen visit? Doesn't she love me anymore?" Over and over. It was torture, Karen, for him and for me. "So you told him I died to spare him confusion? How thoughtful." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like? Walk me through it. When did you first tell him?" Daniel was quiet for a long time. Finally, April 2019. He'd just been diagnosed. The doctor said it would progress quickly, that we should prepare. I drove Dad home from that appointment and he was devastated. He kept saying he didn't want to forget us. He didn't want to lose his memories. I should have been there. You should have told me about the diagnosis. Maybe, but I didn't. And that night, Dad called you. You didn't answer. You were working a night shift or something. He tried 3 more times. No answer. He was so upset, thinking you were avoiding him. I told him you were just busy, but he didn't believe me. He said you'd stopped caring about him since you moved away. That's not true. I know that, but he believed it. And he was spiraling, getting himself worked up. I thought if he believed you'd moved abroad or something, he'd understand why you couldn't visit. So I told him you'd taken a contract nursing job overseas, Singapore. That's why you couldn't call much. But that's not what you eventually told him. No. Daniel finished his drink, poured another. A few weeks later, he forgot about Singapore. He was asking about you again, getting agitated. I was exhausted, Karen. I was there every day, watching him deteriorate, and I snapped. I told him you'd been in an accident, that you'd died. And you know what? He calmed down. He stopped asking. He grieved, but then he accepted it. It was easier for him than thinking you'd abandoned him. Easier for him or easier for you? Both. Yes, both. Is that what you want me to say? It was easier for me, too. I didn't have to keep making excuses for why you never visited. I didn't have to watch him ask for you over and over. So you manufactured evidence. The newspaper articles, the obituary. He needed proof. Without proof, he'd forget I'd told him, and we'd have to go through it all over again. So yes, I created some documents. I found a photo of you, wrote up an article, printed it out. It looked real enough. Real enough to convince a dying man his daughter was dead. He was going to forget you anyway. Daniel's voice cracked. That's what dementia does. It takes everything. At least this way, he had closure. He got to grieve you properly instead of just losing you in pieces. You hired an actress to pretend to be me. He blinked. How did you? I know everything, Daniel. The bank records, the fake obituary, Jessica Reeves, all of it. So don't lie to me. Why did you have someone impersonate me? He rubbed his face. He kept asking to see you. Even after I told him you died, sometimes he'd forget and ask when you were visiting. I thought, if he could see you one more time, see that you were okay, maybe it would give him peace. So I hired someone who looked like you. She'd visit, tell him she was fine, then leave. It worked. He'd be calm for weeks afterward. Until he forgot again. Until he forgot again, Daniel agreed. That was the cycle. Remember, forget. Remember, forget. It was hell. So you changed his will, made yourself the sole beneficiary. He wanted to do that. I didn't force him. He thought I was dead, Daniel. That's why he cut me out, because you convinced him I was dead. He was going to leave everything to me anyway, Daniel said defensively. I was the one taking care of him. Why should you get half when you weren't even here? There it is. I felt oddly calm. That's what this is really about. The money. You decided you deserved it all, and you manufactured a situation to make sure you got it. I earned it. 2 years, Karen. 2 years of my life watching him die slowly, changing his diapers when he couldn't control his bowels anymore, feeding him when he forgot how to use a fork, listening to him call me by Dad's name, by his brother's name, by strangers' names, everyone but my actual name. Do you know what that's like? I could have helped. We could have shared that burden. You weren't here. Because you kept me away. I was shouting now too. You lied to me. You lied to Dad. You manipulated everything to suit your agenda. And now Dad is gone, and he died thinking I was dead. He died without his daughter. How can you live with that? Daniel's face crumpled. For a moment, I saw something raw there. Grief, maybe, or guilt. but then his expression hardened again. "Get out," he said quietly. "Not yet. I want Dad's laptop, the old one he used for email." "Why?" "Because it's part of his estate, and it wasn't listed in the inventory." "Where is it?" "I don't have it." "You're lying." "I said get out, Karen." "Give me the laptop, Daniel." "Get out of my house." We stood there, facing each other, years of resentment and pain between us. Finally, I turned toward the door, but as I did, I glanced into his home office, and I saw it. On the desk, half hidden under some papers, Dad's old Dell laptop, scratched and worn. "You said you didn't have it," I said slowly. "Karen." I walked into the office. Daniel moved to stop me, but I was faster. I grabbed the laptop, held it against my chest. "This is theft," Daniel said. "I'll call the police." "Do it. Let's explain to them why you're hiding evidence. Let's explain the fake obituary and the actress and all of it." We stared at each other. "Get out," he said again, but quietly this time, defeated. I left. Sarah had a computer forensics expert examine the laptop. It took 2 days, but what he found was everything we needed. Dad had been trying to reach me. For months he'd been trying. The laptop was full of unsent emails to me, drafted and saved, but never sent. Dozens of them, spanning March 2019 to November 2019. After that, they stopped, presumably when Dad's dementia had progressed to the point where he could no longer use the computer. Sarah printed them all out. I read them in her office, crying silently as I heard my father's voice coming through across time. March 15th, 2019. Dear Karen, I went to the doctor today. Daniel took me. They say I have dementia. Early stages, they said, but it will get worse. I'm scared, honey. I'm scared of forgetting everything. Forgetting you and your mother and all the good years we had. The doctor wants me to get my affairs in order while I still can. I'm going to update my will this week. I want to make sure you and Daniel are both taken care of. Please call when you can. I miss hearing your voice. Love, Dad. April 3rd, 2019. Karen, I tried calling you today but couldn't get through. Daniel says you're very busy at work. I understand, but I wish we could talk. There are things I need to tell you while I can still remember them. I've been thinking about your mother a lot. I found some of her old letters yesterday. Did you know she wrote me a letter every day when I was deployed in Vietnam? I've forgotten that. It's strange the things I'm remembering and the things I'm forgetting. Call me when you can. Dad. Karen, something strange is happening. Daniel told me you took a job in Singapore, but I don't remember you mentioning that. When did you move? Why didn't you tell me? I tried to call you, but the number isn't working. Daniel gave me a new number he says is yours, but when I call it, someone else answers. A woman with an accent. She says there's no Karen Mitchell there. I'm confused, honey. Can you please email me back or call? I need to hear your voice. Dad. May 18th, 2019. Karen, Daniel says you died. He showed me articles. There was an accident in Seattle. He says it happened last week, but I don't remember anyone telling me. This can't be right. I would know if my daughter died. I would feel it, wouldn't I? But the articles look real. There's a photo of you. Daniel is planning a memorial service. If this is real, if you're really gone, I don't know how I'll survive it. You're my little girl. You can't be gone. Please tell me this isn't real. Dad. 25 May 2019. Karen, they held your memorial service today. I didn't want to go, but Daniel insisted. There were flowers. Your picture was there. People said nice things about you. But you weren't there. If you were really dead, wouldn't you have been there? I keep thinking I see you. Yesterday, I thought you were in the kitchen making coffee like you used to on Sunday mornings, but when I went to look, no one was there. Daniel says I'm confused. He says the dementia is making me see things that aren't there, but I know what I saw. I know my own daughter. If you're alive, please come home. Please tell me I'm not losing my mind. Dad. 2nd July 2019. Karen, I don't understand what's happening. Daniel says you're dead, the articles say you're dead, but then why do I keep seeing you? Why do I keep dreaming about you calling me, trying to reach me? Last night I dreamed you were outside my window, knocking on the glass, trying to get in. You were crying. You were saying, Dad, I'm not dead. Please believe me. I'm not dead. I woke up and ran to the window, but you weren't there. Of course you weren't, because you're dead. Daniel says so. But why don't I believe him? Dad. August 15th, 2019. Karen, I'm forgetting things. More and more things. I forgot Daniel's birthday last week. I forgot where I put my keys. I forgot what year it is. But I haven't forgotten you. I remember teaching you to ride a bike. I remember your first day of school. I remember walking you down the aisle at your wedding. I remember everything about you. So why do people keep telling me you're dead? Something is wrong. Something is very wrong, but I can't figure out what it is. My mind won't let me hold on to the thoughts long enough to make sense of them. I love you, Karen. Wherever you are, whatever is happening, I love you. Dad. September 3rd, 2019. Karen, I don't remember how to send email. I keep trying to press the button that makes it go, but I can't find it. Daniel took away my phone. He says I was calling wrong numbers, bothering people, but I was trying to call you. I know I was. I think. I love you. Dad. November 12th, 2019. Karen, I can't remember your face anymore. I look at pictures and I know it's you, but I can't make your face stay in my mind. I'm scared. I'm so scared. Don't let me forget you. Please don't let me forget you. Dad. That was the last email. After that, nothing. Presumably, he'd declined to the point where he could no longer use the computer at all. I sat in Sarah's office, these pages spread in front of me, and I wept. Not quietly, not politely, but in great heaving sobs. My father had known. On some level, even through the dementia, he'd known something was wrong. He'd tried to fight it, tried to hold on to the truth, and he failed. Because of Daniel. Because my brother had systematically isolated him, manipulated him, gaslighted him, even as his mind was deteriorating. This is abuse, Sarah said quietly. This is unequivocal elder abuse. He knew your father doubted the story. He knew your father was trying to reach you, and he stopped him. Will this stand up in court? Yes. The phone records show Daniel had control of your father's phone by May 2019. He'd switched it to a plan in his own name, with him as the primary account holder. Your father's attempts to call you were blocked. The emails were never sent. And look at this. She showed me another document from the forensic analysis. Your father Googled how to tell if someone is really dead and find obituary Karen Mitchell, Seattle, multiple times. He was trying to verify the information Daniel gave him. He didn't fully believe it. So what happens now? Now we take this to court. We show the judge that Daniel committed fraud, that he deliberately manipulated a vulnerable adult for financial gain. We show the pattern of behavior, the fake obituary, the actress's testimony, Jessica Reeves' text messages, the phone records, the bank statements, and, most damningly, Dad's unsent emails. Everything pointed to a calculated campaign of deception. What are our chances? Better than they were. With this evidence, I'd say 60-40 in our favor, maybe better. Judges take elder abuse seriously. The question is whether Daniel will fight or settle. He'll fight. You don't know him like I do. He'll fight to the bitter end. Then we fight back. The probate court hearing was scheduled for September 2022, nearly a year after Dad's death, the longest year of my life. I'd gone back to Seattle briefly, wrapped up loose ends at work, and requested an extended leave of absence. Then I'd returned to Denver and stayed. I needed to be here for this. I needed to see it through. Sarah had built an ironclad case: the fake obituary, the actress's testimony, Jessica Reeves' text messages, the phone records, the bank statements, and, most damningly, Dad's unsent emails. Everything pointed to a calculated campaign of deception. Daniel hired his own lawyer, a slick corporate attorney named Marcus Webb, who specialized in estate litigation. Webb's strategy was predictable: paint Daniel as the devoted son who'd sacrificed everything to care for his ailing father, and paint me as the absent daughter who'd abandoned Dad in his time of need. The reality is, Webb argued in his opening statement, Daniel Mitchell spent 2 years as his father's primary caregiver. He quit his job, gave up his social life, dedicated every waking hour to Robert Mitchell's care. Meanwhile, Karen was in Seattle living her life, visiting perhaps once every few years. When Robert Mitchell updated his will to reflect the reality of who was actually there for him, he made a choice, a clear, conscious choice to leave his estate to the son who'd earned it. As for the allegations of fraud, yes, Daniel told his father that Karen had died, but this was not fraud. This was mercy. Robert Mitchell had advanced dementia. He couldn't understand why his daughter never visited, never called. This confusion caused him immense distress. Daniel, in consultation with Robert's doctors, made the difficult decision to tell a therapeutic lie, a white lie meant to give his father peace. This is a recognized technique in dementia care, known as validation therapy, or entering the patient's reality. Daniel was not manipulating his father for financial gain. He was protecting him from emotional harm. It was a good argument. I could see some of the people in the gallery nodding. Then Sarah stood up. "Your Honor, opposing counsel wants you to believe this is a story about a devoted son making hard choices, but the evidence tells a different story. This is a story about financial exploitation, about a man who saw his father's illness as an opportunity." She walked the judge through everything: the timeline of events, Daniel becoming joint owner of Dad's accounts within weeks of the dementia diagnosis, the systematic isolation, blocking Dad's phone calls to me, intercepting his emails, keeping me away with excuses and lies, the fake obituary, created not just to give Dad peace, but to ensure I was written out of the will. If Daniel Mitchell was truly acting in his father's best interests, why didn't he tell Karen about the diagnosis? Why did he actively prevent Robert from contacting her? Why did he hire an actress to impersonate Karen instead of just facilitating actual contact between father and daughter? She projected Dad's unsent emails on a screen, reading portions aloud. The courtroom was silent as my father's words filled the space: his confusion, his fear, his desperate attempts to reach me. These are not the words of a man at peace with his daughter's death. These are the words of a man who knew something was wrong, a man who was trying, even as his mind failed him, to uncover the truth. Daniel Mitchell didn't give his father peace. He gave him confusion, fear, and unnecessary grief, and he did it for money. Webb tried to recover. He called character witnesses, people who'd seen Daniel at Dad's bedside, who could attest to his devotion. He called a dementia specialist, who explained that therapeutic lying was sometimes necessary in memory care. Patients with advanced dementia often can't process complex truths. Telling them things that align with their current understanding of reality can reduce agitation and improve quality of life. But on cross-examination, Sarah destroyed him. Doctor, is it standard practice to create fake newspaper obituaries as part of therapeutic lying? Well, no, but is it standard practice to hire actresses to impersonate deceased family members? That's not typical, no. Is it standard practice to block a patient's phone calls to family members and intercept their emails? No. In your professional opinion, doctor, is there any therapeutic benefit to preventing a dementia patient from contacting their living daughter? The doctor hesitated. No. Contact with loved ones is generally beneficial. So Daniel Mitchell's actions went beyond standard therapeutic lying, didn't they? It would appear so. We had him. Jessica Reeves testified next, and her testimony was devastating. She described the 10 visits she'd made to Dad's house, how uncomfortable she'd felt pretending to be someone else, how Daniel had coached her on what to say. Did Mr. Mitchell ever explain why he couldn't just have Karen visit in person? Sarah asked. He said she lived far away and was too busy with work, but then one time I asked if maybe they could video call instead, and he got really defensive. He said that wouldn't work, that his father needed to see Karen in person. It didn't make sense to me, but he was paying me, so I didn't push it. When did you realize something was wrong? When your investigator contacted me and explained what was actually happening, I was horrified. I thought I was helping a sick old man feel better. I had no idea I was helping someone commit fraud. Webb tried to discredit her on cross-examination, suggesting she was testifying to avoid being charged as an accessory, but Jessica held firm. I'm testifying because what I did was wrong, she said. I didn't know it at the time, but I was part of something terrible. I want to make it right. Then came the moment I'd been dreading, my own testimony. I took the stand, raised my right hand, and swore to tell the truth. Daniel sat at the defense table, his face unreadable. Sarah asked me to describe my relationship with Dad, our weekly phone calls, how gradually I'd been cut off from him. I described my attempts to visit, Daniel's excuses, the growing sense that something was wrong but not knowing what. Did you know your father had dementia? Sarah asked. Not until after he died. Daniel never told me. If you had known, would you have come to Denver? Immediately. I would have taken a leave of absence from work. I would have been there to help care for him. Why didn't you push harder to visit? This was the question I'd been asking myself for a year. I should have. I regret every day that I didn't. But Daniel was very convincing. He always had explanations for why it wasn't a good time. Dad was sick, or tired, or confused. Then the pandemic happened and I was working in a COVID ward. Daniel said I'd be a health risk to Dad, which was true. By the time the pandemic eased up, I'd lost touch with how bad things really were. I trusted my brother to tell me the truth. I shouldn't have. Webb's cross-examination was brutal. He made me admit I'd only visited Denver twice in the 5 years before Dad's death. He made me admit I sometimes went 2 weeks without calling. He painted a picture of a neglectful daughter trying to swoop in after Dad's death to claim money she didn't deserve. Isn't it true, Miss Mitchell, that you were building a career in Seattle, that you chose your job over your family? I was working as a nurse. Yes, I was building a career, but I never chose anything over my father. I loved him. Yet you weren't there when he needed you. Because your client lied to me, because he actively prevented me from being there. Or perhaps, Webb said smoothly, you weren't there because you chose not to be, and now you're trying to blame Daniel for your own failings as a daughter. I wanted to scream at him. Instead, I took a breath and said calmly, Daniel told our father I was dead. He faked my obituary. He hired someone to impersonate me. If I'd truly abandoned Dad, if I truly didn't care, why would Daniel have needed to go to such elaborate lengths to explain my absence? Webb didn't have an answer for that. Finally, Daniel himself took the stand. He looked smaller somehow, older. The confidence he'd had in his own home was gone. He looked like what he was, a man caught in an indefensible lie. Webb walked him through his version of events, the diagnosis, the decline, the difficult decisions he'd made as primary caregiver. Daniel spoke about the endless days and nights, the fear, the exhaustion, watching his father disappear piece by piece. "It was the hardest thing I've ever done," Daniel said, his voice breaking, "and I did it alone. I know Karen thinks I kept her away, but the truth is she kept herself away. She had her life in Seattle. She had her career, her apartment, her whole world there. And I was here, dealing with Dad day after day." "Why did you tell your father that Karen had died?" "Because he was suffering. Every single day he'd ask about her. When is Karen coming? Why doesn't Karen call? Doesn't Karen love me anymore?" And I'd make excuses. "She's busy, she'll call soon. She's planning to visit," but she never did. And Dad would get so upset. He'd cry, he'd pace around the house looking for her. The doctors said the agitation was making his condition worse. "So what did you do?" "I made a choice. I told him Karen had died in an accident. And you know what? He calmed down. He grieved, yes, but then he found peace. He stopped asking about her. He stopped wondering why she'd abandoned him. He had closure." "Did you create the obituary and news articles yourself?" "Yes. Dad needed proof. Without something concrete, he'd forget what I'd told him, and we'd have to go through it all again. So I created documents that looked real enough to satisfy him." "What about hiring Jessica Reeves?" Daniel shifted uncomfortably. I admit, that was a mistake. Dad kept having these moments where he'd forget I'd told him Karen was dead. He'd ask to see her. I thought if someone who looked like her visited, just briefly, he'd be satisfied. I thought it would help." "Did you intend to defraud your father or steal from him?" "No, never. Everything I did for Dad. The money I withdrew from his accounts went to his care. The house had to be sold to pay for the memory care facility. And yes, he changed his will to leave everything to me, but that was his choice. He wanted to take care of the son who'd taken care of him." It was a masterful performance, almost believable. Almost. Then Sarah stood up for cross-examination. "Mr. Mitchell, you testified that your sister never visited, that she kept herself away. But isn't it true that you actively discouraged her visits, that you told her it would be too stressful for your father?" "I may have said that, but—" "Yes or no, please." "Yes, but I was trying to protect Dad." "You were trying to protect your inheritance," Sarah interrupted. "You knew that if Karen visited, she'd see how bad your father's condition was. She'd want to be involved in his care. She might even move back to Denver to help, and that would interfere with your plans, wouldn't it?" "That's not true." "Let's talk about the phone calls. You testified that Karen rarely called your father, but phone records show Robert Mitchell attempted to call Karen 73 times between March and August 2019. 73 times. Did Karen receive any of those calls?" Daniel's jaw tightened. I don't know." "You don't know? You transferred your father's phone to an account in your name in May 2019. You had control of his phone. Did you block his calls to your sister?" "I was managing his phone because he kept calling wrong numbers." "Yes or no, Mr. Mitchell, did you block his calls to your sister?"
A long pause. "Yes."
"Why?" "Because it upset him when she didn't answer. He'd call, and she was never there, and it made him agitated." Or perhaps she was there, Sarah said, but you made sure those calls never went through because you needed Karen to remain absent. You needed your father to believe she'd abandoned him because that made your lie more believable, didn't it? I was protecting him. Were you protecting him when you intercepted his emails? We have evidence that your father drafted dozens of emails to Karen, emails expressing confusion about your story, emails questioning whether Karen was really dead. Did you prevent those emails from being sent? His computer was acting up. I was going to help him send them. You've had that laptop for nearly a year, Mr. Mitchell. You never sent those emails. You never told Karen about them. Instead, you hid the laptop because you knew it contained evidence of your fraud. I didn't. Your father wrote, and I quote, "Daniel says you're dead, but I don't believe him. Something is wrong." Did you read that email, Mr. Mitchell? Daniel's face went pale. I don't remember. You don't remember. How convenient. Let me ask you something else. When did you become joint owner of your father's bank accounts? I don't know the exact date. April 2019, 3 weeks after his dementia diagnosis. Is that correct? I needed access to his accounts to pay his bills. And to pay yourself. Bank records show you withdrew over $60,000 in cash over the next 2 years. Can you account for that money? It went to Dad's care. Really? Because the care facility has records showing they were paid directly from your father's accounts via check and automatic payment. So where did that $60,000 in cash go, Mr. Mitchell? Various expenses. I don't have receipts for everything. How convenient. Let's talk about the will. Your father updated his will in November 2019, correct? Yes. That was 6 months after you told him Karen had died. By that point, his dementia was quite advanced. Was he competent to make that decision? The lawyer said he was. The lawyer, Gerald Morrison, testified that your father was grieving and confused, but technically met the legal standard for competency. But let me ask you this. Did you tell Mr. Morrison that you'd fabricated Karen's death? Silence. Mr. Mitchell, did you inform the lawyer that the reason your father believed his daughter was dead was because you'd lied to him? No. Why not? Because it didn't matter. Dad believed it. That was his reality. It mattered, Sarah said coldly, because if Mr. Morrison had known the truth, that Karen was alive and you were systematically preventing her from contacting her father, he never would have approved that will. He would have recognized it as the product of fraud. Isn't that true? I don't know what he would have done. You stole your sister's inheritance, Mr. Mitchell. You exploited your father's illness, manipulated his reality, and isolated him from his daughter, all to ensure you got every penny of his estate. That's what happened, isn't it? No, I loved my father. I took care of him when no one else would. You tortured him, Sarah said, her voice suddenly hard. You made him believe his daughter was dead. You made him grieve for a living person. You denied him the comfort of speaking to Karen when he was scared and confused. You robbed him of his final years with his daughter. For money. That's not. How much is your father's grief worth, Mr. Mitchell? How much did you profit from his suffering? Objection. Webb was on his feet. Argumentative, Your Honor. Sustained, the judge said, but the damage was done. Sarah sat down. Daniel stumbled through a few more questions from Webb on redirect, trying to recover, but it was too late. The jury of one, the judge, had seen through him. The judge took 2 weeks to render his decision. 2 weeks of waiting, of checking my phone constantly, of barely sleeping. Finally, the call came. We were to appear in court for the ruling. I dressed carefully that morning, a simple black dress, the pearl necklace my mother had left me. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw my father's eyes looking back at me. He'd be proud, I thought, proud that I'd fought for the truth. The courtroom was nearly empty, just me, Sarah, Daniel, Webb, and a handful of spectators. The judge entered and we all stood. "Please be seated," Judge Maria Rodriguez said. She was in her 60s with sharp eyes and an unreadable expression. She'd presided over the entire trial with firm neutrality, giving nothing away. "I've reviewed all the evidence presented, as well as the testimony of the witnesses. This is a deeply troubling case. On one hand, we have Daniel Mitchell, who by all accounts did serve as his father's primary caregiver during a difficult and painful illness. The demands of caring for someone with dementia are extraordinary, and I don't discount the sacrifice Daniel made in taking on that role." My heart sank. She was going to rule in his favor. "However," the judge continued, and I dared to hope again, "the evidence overwhelmingly demonstrates that Daniel Mitchell did not merely provide care for his father, he systematically exploited Robert Mitchell's cognitive decline for financial gain." Daniel's face went white. "The facts are clear," Judge Rodriguez said. "Within weeks of Robert Mitchell's dementia diagnosis, Daniel gained control of his father's finances. He blocked Robert's attempts to contact Karen Mitchell. He fabricated elaborate lies, including fake newspaper articles and obituaries, to convince his father that his daughter was dead. He hired an actress to impersonate Karen Mitchell. And he actively prevented Robert from discovering the truth, even intercepting emails in which Robert expressed doubt about the story he'd been told." The judge looked directly at Daniel. "Mr. Mitchell, you claim you did all this out of love, to protect your father from the pain of feeling abandoned, but the evidence suggests otherwise. Your father's own words in the emails he tried to send show that your deception did not bring him peace. It brought him confusion, fear, and grief. He died believing his daughter was dead, mourning her unnecessarily when a simple phone call could have brought them both comfort. Furthermore," she continued, "you updated your father's will during this deception period, ensuring that you would inherit his entire estate. You did not inform the attorney handling the will that you had fabricated Karen's death. This is unconscionable conduct. It rises to the level of fraud and elder abuse." I couldn't breathe. This was really happening. "Therefore, I find that the will dated November 15, 2019, was procured through fraud and undue influence. I hereby invalidate that will. Robert Mitchell's estate will be distributed according to his previous will, dated April 2011, which divided his assets equally between his two children." Sarah grabbed my hand under the table. "Additionally," she said, "I'm ordering Daniel Mitchell to provide a full accounting of all withdrawals from Robert Mitchell's accounts between April 2019 and October 2021. Any funds that cannot be accounted for with proper documentation will be considered conversion of estate assets and must be repaid to the estate in full. Finally, I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges related to financial exploitation of an at-risk elder. This court is adjourned." The gavel fell. It was over. I sat there for a long moment, unable to process what had just happened. We'd won. After a year of fighting, of digging up painful truths, of reliving my father's last days, we'd won. "Karen?" Sarah was smiling, tears in her eyes. "We did it." "We did it," I repeated numbly. Across the courtroom, Daniel stood with Webb, his face ashen. He looked over at me once, and I saw something in his expression, not anger, not defiance, but defeat, and maybe, just maybe, shame. Then he turned and walked out. The district attorney did prosecute Daniel. He was charged with financial exploitation of an at-risk adult, a felony in Colorado. He took a plea deal, 3 years probation, community service, and a permanent mark on his record. He also had to repay $47,000 to the estate, money he couldn't account for from the withdrawals he'd made. The estate was eventually settled. After legal fees, funeral expenses, and Dad's debts, there was about $280,000 left. Half went to Daniel, half to me. I didn't want it. The money felt tainted, blood money purchased with my father's suffering. But Sarah convinced me to take it. "Your father wanted you to have it," she said. "Honor that. Use it for something good." So I did. I donated half to Alzheimer's research and used the rest to establish a scholarship fund at Dad's old high school for students pursuing careers in healthcare, the Robert Mitchell Memorial Scholarship. It felt right. I never spoke to Daniel again. Sometimes I think about reaching out, trying to understand, maybe even to forgive. But then I remember Dad's emails. "Please tell me this isn't real." And I can't. Maybe someday, but not yet. I went back to Seattle, to my job, to my life, but I was different. The whole experience had changed me. I looked at my patients differently now, especially the elderly ones. I thought about their families, about who was caring for them, about who might be exploiting them. I started volunteering with an elder rights organization, helping families navigate the complexities of dementia care. I gave talks at community centers about recognizing signs of elder abuse. I turned my pain into purpose. One day, about 6 months after the trial, I got a package in the mail. No return address, but postmarked from Denver. Inside was a photo album, Dad's photo album, the one I'd looked through as a child 1,000 times. Photos of Mom and Dad's wedding, photos of Daniel and me as kids, photos of family vacations, holidays, birthdays, and tucked in the back, a letter. From Daniel. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity won. "Karen, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I need you to know something. I loved Dad. Everything I did because I loved him. I also resented him. Resented that I was the one stuck taking care of him while you got to live your life. Resented that even when he could barely remember his own name, he still remembered you, still asked for you, still loved you more than me. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted to punish you for that, for being the favorite, for being able to leave, for having a life that wasn't defined by being Robert Mitchell's son. So yes, I exploited his illness. I isolated you. I lied. And I told myself I was doing it for his sake, because if you weren't in the picture, maybe I could finally be enough. Maybe I could finally be the son he deserved. But I wasn't. I failed him, Karen. And I failed you. I know the photo album doesn't make up for anything, but I thought you should have it. You're the one who actually loved him without conditions. You're the one who deserves his memories. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't matter, but I'm sorry. Daniel." I sat there holding that letter for a long time. Then I put it in a drawer and tried to forget about it. But sometimes, late at night, when I can't sleep, I take it out and read it again. And I try to understand how someone can love someone and hurt them so deeply. I don't have an answer yet. Maybe I never will. It's been 2 years now since Dad died. 2 years since I discovered I'd been dead for 2 of the last years of his life. I visit his grave when I'm in Denver, which isn't often. I tell him about my work, about the scholarship fund, about the families I've helped. I tell him I'm sorry I wasn't there. I tell him I love him. And sometimes I swear I can hear his voice. "I know, sweetheart. I know." The photo album Daniel sent sits on my bookshelf now. Sometimes I page through it, looking at photos of our family when we were whole, when Mom was alive and Daniel and I were still close, and Dad was just Dad, not a victim of dementia and his son's betrayal. There's one photo I keep coming back to. It's from my college graduation. Dad is standing between Daniel and me, an arm around each of us, beaming with pride. We all look so happy, so normal. I wonder sometimes, at what point did things go wrong? Was it when Mom died? When I moved to Seattle? When Dad got sick? Or was the poison always there, hidden under the surface, waiting for the right circumstances to emerge? I don't know. I'll probably never know. What I do know is this: dementia doesn't just steal memories, it creates a vulnerability, an opening for people to rewrite reality however they want. And when someone you love takes advantage of that vulnerability, when they exploit the confusion and fear of a dying parent for money, that's a betrayal that goes beyond inheritance, beyond finances. It's a theft of something much more precious: the truth, the dignity of dying surrounded by people who love you, not lies, the comfort of holding your daughter's hand one more time, hearing her voice, knowing she's there. Daniel stole that from Dad, and he stole it from me too. I got one more thing recently, a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. It was Mr. Brennan, Dad's old teaching colleague. He'd found an old box in his garage, files from Dad's classroom. Inside was a letter, one Dad had written but apparently never sent, addressed to me. I drove to Denver the next day to pick it up. The letter was dated March 2019, right after Dad's diagnosis, before Daniel told him I was dead, before the lies began. My dearest Karen, I'm writing this while I still can. The doctors say I have dementia, that it will get worse. They say I might forget things, important things, like names and faces and all the years we've spent together. I'm terrified, honey, terrified of losing myself, of losing you. But more than that, I'm terrified that I'll forget to tell you how proud I am of you, how much I love you, how grateful I am that you're my daughter. I know you're far away. I know your life is in Seattle, and that's how it should be. You need to live your own life, chase your own dreams. I never wanted you to feel obligated to stay in Denver just because of me. But if things get bad, if I start to forget, please don't let me forget that you love me. Come visit if you can. Call me. Remind me who you are, even if I don't recognize you. Because even if my brain forgets, my heart won't. I know it won't. You'll always be my little girl, the daughter I'm proudest of, the light of my life. I love you, Karen. No matter what happens, no matter what I might say or do as this disease takes hold, remember that I love you. Always have, always will. Dad. I'm crying as I write this, just as I cried when I first read those words, because that letter is everything I needed to hear, everything Daniel tried to take from me. Dad loved me. He knew I loved him, and he wanted me there, wanted me to fight through the confusion and remind him of our connection. Daniel denied us that. He denied Dad the chance to hold on to me as long as he could, and he denied me the chance to be there when Dad needed me most. That's the real crime, not the money, not the inheritance, the stolen time, the stolen goodbye. But here's what Daniel couldn't steal: the memories I do have. Dad teaching me to ride a bike, Dad staying up all night to help me study for my nursing boards, Dad walking me down the aisle at my wedding, tears in his eyes. Dad was a good man, a loving father, and no amount of Daniel's manipulation can erase that. So I carry Dad with me, in the scholarship that bears his name, in the families I help navigate dementia care, in the small kindnesses I try to show my elderly patients, the extra time I take to listen to their stories, to remind them they're seen and valued and loved. And I carry him in my heart, where he always was and always will be. If you're reading this and you has a parent with dementia, please stay vigilant, stay involved. Don't let anyone, even family, isolate you from your loved one. Visit often, call often, question things that don't make sense. Because the Daniel Mitchells of the world are counting on distance, on busy schedules, on trust and family bonds to give them cover for exploitation. Don't let them win. Your parent deserves better. You deserve better. And the truth, no matter how painful, is always worth fighting for.